I'd like to introduce Paul Coderre from Cisco. He's going to give us another presentation, again, about security. It is such a hot topic and such an important piece of our everyday life. So, Paul?
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm sure we're all looking forward to cooking with Chef Michael. So I'm going to dive right into the session. I timed it so it's about 10 minutes, give or take, so just kind of you have an idea on how long my session is going to be. In addition, if you're moving around, the way I present is I don't really read anything that's on the slide. I'm kind of hoping and expecting you to kind of read some of the stuff that are on the slide. Very few of them are wordy. Most of them are just stats and numbers that I'll kind of talk to in the back end. So if you have an opportunity to kind of look at the slides as I progress them, that'll help kind of with the overall message that I'm sharing. As John said, my name is Paul Coderre. I lead the cybersecurity channel for Cisco Canada, and it's a pleasure to be here with everybody today. So in a recent National Cyber Threat Assessment report, we can see that malicious behavior will get worse before it gets better. And that's partly because of the increased threat landscape. It was a little easier to control when we had that moat and castle type of an environment. You were able to kind of put a lot more barriers between you and the data wasn't living and breathing all over the place, and us as individuals weren't accessing that data from all over the place. You can see that has substantially changed with the move to more software as a service, more cloud adoption, more remote workers. That's substantially changed the way that we secure the business, and it's made it a lot more difficult for everybody. The increase in malicious activity is, as we know, only going to increase and grow in 2023. Public and private organizations are still figuring out how to contain the growing number of cyber threats, and hopefully today we'll talk a little bit about some ways that we can help that. So what are some of the challenges that we're facing in today's landscape, and what are some of the recommendations to address them? What I'm going to be reviewing today is some highlights from our Security Outcome Study. It's an annual study that we do. Is about 4,700 people are surveyed and studied for these results. It's a double-blind survey, just so you know. Nobody knows that the survey is coming from Cisco, and nobody at Cisco knows who's answering it. But what we do know is people from 36 countries around the world, 4,700 people, and it's all sizes of business. So it could be small, could be medium, could be large, to all various verticals. That gives us a very, very large sample size. It's actually why this report is one of the most popular ones that we publish on a regular basis. So based on our Security Outcome Study, here are some of the major security program outcomes and recommendations from the study that we're going to review some of today. And at the core, we're going to look at how to better enable the business, how to better manage risk, and of course, how to operate more efficiently. And I think you can all agree that if we can do that holistically and on a repeatable basis, we're going to shore up our organization. There's a very large opportunity actually right now within the cybersecurity space. From my perspective, I feel we finally have the attention that we need as cyber professionals to start to make inroads into securing our organizations. However, as you can see, there's still a massive lack of confidence in the security programs. It's extremely high, which is why I feel there's a really, really big opportunity for us. And that opportunity, and looking at this stat here, to me, it really says you correlate those two things. Like there's a big fear, there's a big risk that we don't really understand it. But I think it's up to all of us and cyber professionals to communicate early and often with other business leaders. And just like in the cybersecurity space, we're all trying to see greater visibility to be more effective in our roles in catching the bad guys and closing off gaps to protect our business. So too should we advocate with leadership to provide them with the same level of visibility into the overall state of the organization and not shy away from these conversations and move from being a cost center to a strategic operations vendor within our own organization. And I believe that the days are almost fully behind us where security is an afterthought. If you look at Cisco, and specifically Chuck Robbins, recently has been on a, we're not going to call it a rampage, but he's been on his podium box touting that cybersecurity is the #1 priority at Cisco, not just for securing our own business, but from a partnering perspective and how we help secure our customers, our partners, and the industry at large. So we've been thrust into this spotlight, and I feel like for cybersecurity professionals, it's like our time to shine. We're no longer kind of hidden in that back room where we now have a seat at the table. A lot of times it wasn't as common to have cybersecurity professionals on the board of directors or meeting with the board of directors on a regular basis. So while that could be scary, we need to be armed with the information to elevate ourselves and the needs of the business. But it is an uphill battle, and most organizations still struggle to effectively articulate the value and needs of cyber security, and we need to ensure that we're better enabling businesses to remain more agile and move quickly. Because what we don't want to do is what we've historically done in security is kind of be the anchor of the business, right? Somebody wants to launch an application, they want to move it real quickly, and then here comes the security department. They say, sorry, you can't launch that application yet because you're breaking a lot of policies or you're exposing. We haven't even tested if the application was developed in a secure fashion, or you're putting it up into an area that we haven't, in our security bubble, haven't really viewed yet. So you're going to need to wait, and sometimes historically that waiting could be weeks, months, sometimes longer before the cybersecurity group blesses that application. And the application team is like, my KPIs say I need to launch this application in a matter of minutes or days at most. So we have to make sure that cybersecurity and the agility of cybersecurity aligned with the way that our business needs to move to stay relevant and to move at the pace of business and the pace of change. So how do we continue to do this? How do we continue to secure our business, right? And simplify things. So our prior study found that a modern, well-integrated tech stack contributed to a more successful cybersecurity program than any other practice. And we feel that in our new studies that we can actually make this more effective. And we've done some question and polling on this. And what we've found is that you might want to upgrade your stack more often. And we found that organizations that upgrade their IT and security technologies quarterly are 26% more likely to achieve a higher security outcome than those who upgrade less than annually. And I think a big part of that is because the speed of business, and specifically the pandemic, has rapidly increased digitization, rapidly increased the move to the cloud. I saw statistics that said 98% of all organizations will have moved some or all of their business to the cloud by the end of 2023. So if you think about what that brings up, this really might require a big shift in how you plan and create your budget for your project. If you're used to doing this on an annual basis, that might not be fast enough. So we might want to think about more quarterly projects and how to roll those out at a quicker pace. More than ever, what we're finding is CISOs and IT decision makers are looking to also reduce their technology vendor stack. In fact, 85% of CISOs surveyed said it is the top priority for them in 2023. This is a key area of competitive advantage for Cisco Cyber, as we have the single largest cybersecurity portfolio. Many people don't really realize just how big it is. I think a lot of people understand, of course, the networking or collaboration. Obviously, we're using WebEx for this presentation today. But we have 100% of the Fortune 100 are Cisco cybersecurity customers. We have the largest non-governmental threat intelligence organization in the world with Cisco Talos that sees 20 billion new threats daily. So if you think about that, having the value of that organization and all of the research that they do, they push that down automatically into all the Cisco security services. So you don't have to pay an additional fee for all of those resources to upgrade your system. They're doing that on a constant basis, which is just increasing the value and the efficacy of the products that we roll out. When you're looking at your tech refresh, you want to also look beyond just the point solutions. For example, we have branch firewalls. That's kind of going by the way of the dodo. To use some older nomenclature. Maybe I'm dating myself a little bit, but at the end of the day, if you just look at I'm going to replace my firewalls in isolation, you may select top right, magic quadrant, best of breed. And then, maybe 6 months down the road, you're like, okay, I gotta, upgrade my endpoint security. And you get best of breed, and you do that along the way. And if you take a step back all of a sudden, and which is most organizations are already doing now, they're looking at say, what we have an average of 15 to 20 different vendors within our organization that leads to 50 to 70 different tool sets within the organization. And most of these disparate vendors they're not working day in, day out to make sure that their product interoperates effectively with all the other ecosystem vendors that are out there. So reducing the number of source vendors, and I would say right now, you could fulfill like almost 100% of your entire cybersecurity stack with Microsoft and Cisco, just to name a couple right there. So that's a really simple way that we put up a chart. So when you're looking at your tech refresh stack, kind of look holistically at your entire stack and see where you can look at reducing the number of vendors, and that'll be incredibly valuable and impactful for raising the efficacy of your overall cybersecurity posture. Security's greatest enemy is complexity. And therefore, the first area to focus on really is simplification of processes. In many cases, there are too many security controls in place, and without thinking about the resulting friction it puts on the business at large. So by simplifying processes, you also eliminate a few of the unnecessary controls. In fact, 44% of organizations have identified that automation as an incentive for tighter integration among their security tech, and we found that strong evidence that well-integrated technologies actually do better automation of security processes. An example of that is the introduction of Cisco SecureX, which is included at no charge with every Cisco cybersecurity solution. It's actually helping to bring and correlate all this information together. It's driving simplicity, automation, and orchestration, some of the things that Costa referenced as well. We know modern, well-integrated IT contributes to the overall security program success. So here's some actions that you can take to improve your overall environment. This is coming right from Helen Patton, one of our advisory CISOs. Look for those cloud-based solutions, investigate automation opportunities, and ensure purchasing requirements include that tech integration capability, things that are natively integrated out of the box, so that you don't have to spend a lot of time, money, and resources to figure out how to cobble together disparate services and solutions. The security really starts not only with using the best technology or best security tooling, but also building a culture of security. This one's probably one of the more difficult ones, or could be one of the more difficult ones, because it requires educating everybody about security. It requires sharing a common language. Attracting the best talent from diverse backgrounds, and developing those security leaders to really reinforce a security-first culture, advancing talent through mentorship, and automating as much as possible are all key areas that will help drive that. As security professionals, it's just also not enough to forecast for 2023 and what might be down the road. We have to have that longer view, so that the investments that we make today aren't obsolete in 6 to 8 months. We need to look 5 and 10 years down the road as much as we can. I know that's the challenge with the way that digitization and the market is evolving so quickly. We don't know what's around the corner, but we have to do our best as possible. Because if you're playing catch up, you're really leaving yourself vulnerable to attackers. With the attack surface becoming exponentially more complex and dispersed, like I talked about in the opening statement, it's even more important to focus on attack surface management and to find and fix those high priority vulnerabilities, as well as threat detection and response within the enterprise environment. We want to find and stop attackers quickly before they can achieve those objectives. Cisco recently made an acquisition of Coderre Security, and it's really helping Cisco as well as our customers to optimize. It's actually becoming one of the hottest topics within our CISOs, talking to us about Coderre Security. In fact, we released Coderre Security within our own organization. If you think about the size of Cisco, about 85,000 employees globally, I think you can imagine the scope and scale of that. We had something in the neighborhood of 25,000 vulnerabilities being identified on a daily basis. Through the implementation of Coderre, we brought that down to less than 10 vulnerabilities per day. So what we've done is we've removed all the noise and been able to correlate and focus on just the areas that are highest risk to the business to focus on first. And then we can work on closing those, knowing that through intelligence, we have 13 or 14 different threat intelligence feeds that feeds into this that can simplify the approach. So you're not kind of, trying to figure out what am I going to close, what am I going to solve, where am I going to spend my time and energy, and hope, fingers crossed, that you're closing off the most high risk vulnerability. Kind of really helps tailor that and pinpoint that. So it's a really valuable addition. For many companies, mastering fundamental security processes have really been hindered, of course, by the industry gap in cybersecurity talent. There are fewer people in the available workforce pool with the right security skills, and that need to protect, detect, respond, and recover from these threats. And in the face of this talent shortage, adopting a prevention-first approach to cybersecurity ultimately is one of the best ways businesses can guard against the malicious actors and continue to see that growing gap between threats being faced. So I'm just about to wrap up here. I got 2 more slides, I believe. Cisco Secure X and our threat response tools, we're seeing a reduction in mean time to detect and mean time to respond by up to 85%. And we've been also working to help automate more and more actions with the incident response game. In addition, we've seen an exponential growth in our Cisco Talos incident response retainer services, offering more teams that are shifting their budget towards a more proactive IR practice. So Costa mentioned cyber risk insurance. Cyber risk insurance is actually only paying out about 25% of the time. 85% of the cases that are being brought to them are not qualifying to be paid out for. Lloyd's of London, one of the largest insurers, has actually now said that any state-sponsored attack is now considered an act of God, and they won't pay out on that. Because at the end of the day, insurance companies are in the business to make money and not pay out. So they're making it harder and harder to pay out. In addition, as Costa mentioned, it's 23 days to recover from a breach. But if you don't have a cyber insurance or incident response retainer, the average number right now, if you don't have a retainer, is 35 days to get an incident response group to start working on it. So if you tack that on to the plus 23 days, you're now looking at a couple months before we can even move forward. I can advance to one more slide here. So talent really makes a big difference. What's interesting, though, is the relationship between talent and automation. And it's actually, you can have strong talent with weak automation and strong automation with weak talent. They kind of work out to be about the same level of efficacy. What you want to make sure you're doing is increasing your talent with your automation. You can't have one without the other. They really need to be combined together. So what we recommend, and Costa mentioned this a little bit, is to establish a zero trust model using things like multi-factor authentication and a least trust environment. What we found is that over 30% of organizations that have implemented a zero trust have increased their security resiliency. And if you are aware of SASE Secure Access Service Edge, our statistics are showing 15% increase in efficacy for those that have implemented that type of an environment. So if you want to read a little bit more about the material that I've been presenting today, these are the 3 reports that I've pulled all the information from this presentation from. There's these 3 reports. One analyzes 25 cybersecurity practices against 11 desired outcomes. The second one is all about top 5 most highly correlated practices, and the third one is all about achieving security resiliency. So reach out to your team at i-Virtualize, and let's start building up a better cybersecurity practice together. With that, I'm Paul Coderre. Let's get cooking. I appreciate everybody. If there's any questions, we can have a few minutes to answer those, or we can get to eating, which is the best part. Thank you very much, everybody, for having me today.
Thank you very much, Paul.